Yo, welcome back to the channel. Sorry, it's been a few days. I just want to talk today about how people can be so wrong when it comes to, I guess, diagnosing a problem. And it's happened over and over and over and over again throughout history. I mean, you would think that things that go wrong only sort of need to happen once and we learn from them, but it just doesn't seem to be the case. And we had the meltdown of 2008. And of course, the Fed came to the rescue with printed money. And initially, a lot of people were concerned about the consequences of just flooding liquidity into the markets. But then they got richer. They stopped caring. The idea that the central banks around the world, and it was starting with, Ben Bernanke from the Fed, that they could flood the markets with trillions of dollars of liquidity, and that the government could just go into unprecedented levels of debt, and in our lifetime we would never have any need to be concerned, or nothing would go wrong. This just defies logic. I mean, inflation is a real problem that you're probably now seeing in your own economies, wherever you may be based. Inflation is a problem because in order to fight the inflation, you can't stimulate the economy. And we've gotten through the last, since 2008, the whole thing has been based on a stimulus. Not all countries pre-pandemic did do quantitative easing, but the stimulus was in the form of low interest rates. I mean, they just keep going lower. I mean, 6% was low, then 5% was crazy low, then like 4.7, oh, that's crazy, then 4.2. At one point, I said the bottom that mortgage rates will go will be 3.99 for 2 years. I honestly did not think they would ever go lower than that, because that was crazy low on a mortgage. And they went to 2.19. I think that was for 1 or 2 years, but you could fix under 3% for 5 years. A lot of people didn't. They will regret that now, but it was available. And it's definitely something I would have done, was fix for 5 years if I was on it with a mortgage, to and I'd pay a little bit more than, say, if I fix for 1 year or 2 years or 3 or whatever. But it's still like, how much lower did you? Interest rates were at zero when they were at 2 point something percent. So they were, unless they went negative, they weren't going to go lower. So now here we are, and reality is kicked in. There's been so much delusion from rational and otherwise intelligent people. And here's the thing. When people clearly laid this out on the table, you'd have Peter Schiff, for example. He would be warning of this exact problem. He warned that crypto was a bubble, that the Fed had created one enormous bubble, that the stock market, the real estate market, everything was in a bubble. And that we would get inflation, and there was more inflation than they were reporting. But now it's so much they can't hide it, although they do underreport it still. That they would have to either raise interest rates or come clean that they were never going to fight inflation, that they can't raise interest rates, and inflation is going to accelerate. And I'm not quite 100% sure what the exact move of the central banks will be, but I'm more on the side that they will raise interest rates until such a point that the economy feels the squeeze, where unemployment, because if they keep raising interest rates, I'm pretty sure unemployment is going to go hand in hand, and I think the number one sector will be construction. Roughly, I'm from New Zealand, and roughly we have had, I think, 50,000 consents a year. And this is the third year. I might have my facts wrong, but I think there's been 150,000 new houses built. And yes, we had a housing shortage. 150,000 new houses built or consented and under construction or due to be constructed. But and what shocked me was that I think the number was 2% more consents in September than there was in September 2021, and that shocked me because in September 2021 interest rates were way lower and inflation hadn't been such an issue as it was. Like, it was surfacing, but I mean, it has really surfaced in 2022. Like, it is crazy inflation. It's just, money goes nowhere. So yeah, and especially next year in New Zealand, we had 25 cents a litre taken off fuel when prices went through the roof after the war broke out and oil prices skyrocketed. They took 25 cents a litre off the fuel price, and that's coming back on right after Christmas in January. And I'm telling you now, people can't afford it. People cannot afford it. They're tapped out. They have to be. I mean, I think there's more. Like, I've got eyes. I went into town the other day, and this is leading up to Christmas. It was dead. Everything, everywhere was dead. Cafes, retail stores, dairy, like everything was dead because people are spending all their money on food, energy, increased mortgage rates, and people are getting scared where they're going, okay, all right, we borrowed $780,000 at 2%. And there's 50,000 Westpac Bank, that's a bank, Westpac, customers in New Zealand rolling off their low rate mortgages of 2% or whatnot in the next 6 months. 50,000, and that's just one bank. So when people do put their heads in the sand, they pretend things aren't as bad, they sort of don't want to focus on their problems because they can't deal with it, it's too hard. So they'll be cutting spending and they will feel tapped out now. But when those rates go up, those mortgage rates go up, and in 6 months, where are mortgage rates going to be? Unless they pay a break fee now, but they're going to be facing higher rates, and as that happens, maybe we finish these 50,000 constructions builds that are all consented, or maybe some of them don't end up happening, or somebody goes broke and whatnot. But eventually, as these interest rates go up and inflation goes up and the fuel tax comes on, and Wallboard, for example, Wallboard has gone up is going up 15%, I think, this month or next month. 15%. Right, for wallboard. So that's one thing. So if the average cost of building goes up the same amount, 15%, from where it was, which was crazy high, who's gonna be building? It's going to be a lot of construction workers and plumbers and painters and stuff. They won't have the work, and they might be busy for 6 more months or another year, but give it time and there's going to be unemployment. Hospitality is really getting hit hard from the labour shortage. They can't find the workers. A lot of the places have to shut down. They just can't even open because they've had to reduce their hours. But how long, businesses aren't able to just raise their prices as much as they like with no consequence. Eventually people say can't afford to go to a restaurant and they stop turning up. And suddenly the layoffs come. They might need the workers when they're busy, but they can't afford to keep them for the 40 hours or 50 hours or 60 hours or 70, 80 hours, whatever they're working. Also, people are burnt out in that industry and might be looking to do something else because I'll get the same money holding the stop-go sign because they can't get anyone. But eventually things are going to change and I think construction is going to be construction, hospitality, and retail will be the first three to really start going, and you'll start, I think, seeing a lot of landlords or a lot of real estate investors, homeowners, foreclosing, or real estate people going bankrupt. You'll start seeing more and more and more of it, and while this is all happening, when people are put out of a job and looking for another job in an environment with higher interest rates and surging inflation and contracting consumer spending and confidence, and how's the government going to support all those people? They can't. The people support the government. The government can't support all the people. It can't be a case of 30% of the workforce is now unemployed and getting a handout from the government, because in an inflationary environment, can't print money. If the debt on the national debt interest gets worse, taxes may have to go up, or programs may have to get cut, services may have to get cut. So there is a huge, in my opinion, change of reality coming up in the next 12 months. And you better be ready for it, because if you have got your head in the sand, I tried to warn people, but warnings are ill received. If you said to somebody, don't pay $1 million for a house, it'll come down, and they didn't pay $1 million for a house, and then saw that house that they could have bought for $1 million go to 1.4, you're the bad guy. So you can't say anything. You just got to go on YouTube and let people make their own decisions. But people will get pretty angry with you if that happens. But I always thought I knew there was going to be a crash, because of what was fueling the bubble was not a permanent structure. But when will it crash? Don't know. When it goes on for so long and it doesn't, and it keeps going up and up and up, you do start questioning yourself. Is it ever going to happen? Am I going to be 60 going, it's going to crash one day? But the one thing that I did do was ensure that, I didn't make decisions based on emotions, only on logic, so that I didn't overextend myself and end up being, a mortgagee sale or a bankruptcy or something like that. And so, getting prepared for a crisis takes a long time. If the greatest financial crisis of your lifetime is coming, and you don't want to go down with the ship, to get prepared for it, it's not something that you can go, I'm doing this, and now I'm going to get prepared. Often you're just locked up with all these assets you can't sell, or you've got too much debt, or you've got the bank knocking on your door, or you've got no wiggle room. There's just so many things to say you can't pivot. So yeah, now's the time to really, if you weren't concerned before, I think you should start getting concerned. And of course, if you are the type of person who is concerned, a lot of people say you've got a bad attitude, you've got doom and gloom, and you're negative. So that's, if you weren't negative, you'd be making millions of dollars. But when you can see something so clearly laid out in front of you, and that it's the course of action and the belief in that course of action is so wrong, and it can only end up in a bad state. There's just no other. I've always seen no other outcome that we would get consumer price inflation, or a big stock market crash, or a real estate crash. Our 2008 moment, but it would be magnified by the cheap money. If you think about the amount of cheap money that caused the financial crisis of 2008, it was nothing compared to what happened after 2008. It was just off the charts, reckless, stupid, crazy, insane monetary policy. And if you can see that, and someone tries to tell you, oh, just because you can see that, you're negative, it's just not the case. you're more like, wow, I can see the iceberg approaching, and I'm going to sit in the lifeboat so that I've got my seat ready to go. Um, so anyway, I'll wrap this video up, and write in the comments, and uh, hopefully your strategy has not been to invest in cryptocurrency, because unless you cashed out of that, I've never seen that as a store of value. I've always seen that as a speculative asset with no value. Anyway, until the next one, peace.